Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Hello, all. Welcome to the program. So happy you've all joined us today. I am, of course, your host, Byron Lafayette. Now, I need to preface this episode by apologizing if my voice does slip a few times. I had some dental work this week, so my mouth is still a tad sore. But enough of that. Today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, namely the future of Warner Brothers DCEU. And for those who don't know, DCEU stands for DC Extended Universe and covers the films that Warner Brothers has released in the cinematic universe version of DC Comics since 2013. Now, I have with me today a very special guest, a freelance writer, and my friend, Jonathan Rosaler. And thanks for coming on the program today, Jonathan.
My pleasure, Byron. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an exciting talk here because, it's definitely a controversial one with tones and, grim versus colorful and Zack Snyder versus James Gunn and all this different stuff. So I think it's going to be an interesting topic to kind of see, where Warner Brothers DC has been and where it's going to go from here. And, is there going to be multiple visions or is it going to be one cohesive one?
Oh yeah, I'm one of those guys. I really appreciate Zack Snyder's work with the DC movies. I think Watchmen's underrated. Really appreciate Man of Steel now than I did back when it first came out. I really liked Batman v Superman, but I vastly prefer the Ultimate Edition. And of course, I vastly prefer Zack Snyder's director's cut better than what we got in theaters. So I don't think that's an unpopular opinion.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I think for me, especially like when I saw Batman versus Superman in theaters, like I remember liking it and I was like, oh, this is a good movie. But then like when I saw the Ultimate Edition, I was like, oh, wow, this is like way better. It's just like a lot of the first, especially the first act just made so much more sense when you saw that extra footage.
Yeah, I remember. I saw it like 6 times in theaters, and I remember really liking it. I was not understanding the hate at all. I just felt like people just wanted to compare everything to Marvel, and I just think that was like an unfair thing for people to do. And I, as somebody who likes Marvel, I really do think people need to turn off their comparisons to other superhero movies in general when going into something like I wouldn't go into The Dark Knight comparing it to Batman Begins or another Superman movie or Iron Man or anything like that. I just treat it like its own thing, and it worked for me.
No, exactly. Yeah, because films are going to be different, obviously, and it's kind of like having different tones. I always think is good. It was actually one of the reasons why I've been a huge proponent of saying that I think that Sony's Spider Verse, needs to be separate than Marvel in the sense of not necessarily never crossing over, but not being in separate studios because I like having that extra tone, and that different tone. It's like the Let There Be Carnage coming out. That type of movie would have never happened under the MCU, and just because that's not their style. And so I kind of like that it exists in this other studio so that we can
Yeah,
appreciate.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to Let There Be Carnage, and if it ever did happen, it would have been a vastly different movie to be had.
Hmm. No, definitely. So with like the DC extended universe, we've obviously it's been going since 2013. It started with Man of Steel, and for those who are listening, I'll just briefly go over the list of the films here. We have 2013's Man of Steel, 2016's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. We then had 2016's Suicide Squad, 2017's Wonder Woman, 2017's Justice League or Justice League as it's called now, 2018's Aquaman, 2019's Shazam, 2020's Bird of Prey. And we had then in 2020 also, we had Wonder Woman 1984, 2021, Zack Snyders Justice League, and most recently this year, we had The Suicide Squad from James Gunn. And so basically these 11 films encompass the entirety of the DC Extended Universe. as we have seen it now. And Walter Hamada and everything has basically said that they are doubling down on DC. They're not going to stop making films, and they're going to actually be pushing ahead, with TV shows on HBO Max and kind of putting everything cohesively into one universe. And Hamada even said basically that Reeves, the Batman, is going to be the only film that is basically outside of the universe that he's creating, and he wants every other film coming out to be in the same cinematic universe and coexist.
Yeah, it seems like he is doubling down on the multiverse approach, which is I'm fine with. I'm fine with if we because if we do like want to see Zack Snyder come back and finish his movies, it's still a possibility if you're going the multiverse route. Just say it's in a different universe than what Walter Hamada has in mind. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration and anger on social media comes from, is that, if you're going through this multiverse route, why not, include the Snyderverse, as its like own separate thing. You can have your cake and eat it too. It doesn't have to be an either or type of thing, especially with multiverse.
No, I 100% agree with you because, I looking over the plans that Zack Snyder had released, for his Justice League 2 and 3, and I know he said he revised some of the stuff and that it might only be Justice League 2 and not the full trilogy, but we don't know 100%. But I totally understand how, if those films were made, that they would kind of mess up a little bit of the plan, that in the sense of like Batman dying and, jumping ahead to the future and, and kind of world peace and stuff like that. Like, I kind of understand how that kind of stuff may not be the way Warner Brothers wants to go with it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think with HBO Max, as you said, with the multiverse, I think we could easily do like an 8-episode, Dark Side War, that kind of finishes up that storyline, or even an animated movie or something like that. Like, one universe doesn't have to die just so another can succeed,
Yeah,
and have everything.
and the fact that Restore the Snyderverse was out trending DC fandom, I think that kind of speaks volumes,
Mhm.
because that shows that there are supporters of this happening. And I mean, I guess really we're never going to know until next year, once Discovery takes over Warner Media, and like a new regimen takes over. I'm hopeful. Discovery seems to be a very diverse brand. They have ETV, and they have like the Home Network and Shark Week. They have all, and so they're very careful with their demographics of people of color and all that stuff. So I think Discovery could listen to, because they do look at the Snyderverse numbers better than the people at the studio do, and they are taking that into consideration. And at the very least, that kind of shows me I trust Discovery even right before the merger, because at the very least they're considering it. Because if AT&T never sold off to merge with Discovery, I don't think there would be any type of conversation, which is sad, because a lot of the Snyder Cut Blu-ray and 4K sales are doing pretty well. So
Exactly. Like, I mean, everything that I've seen with the merch relating, to Zack Snyder's Justice League, whether it's the action figures, like you said, the 4K Blu-ray sales, like everything is outstanding. And, I think that especially with showing, how, right after the Justice League was released, that it beat in-games numbers and social media mentions. And like you said, outdid like fandom, that I think that it would be wise, I mean, for Discovery to look and say, okay, we have a large fan base here that wants a certain type of product. And, and I could understand if they kind of had to make the tough call of one or the other if we weren't in the age of streaming, that it's like, okay, we have to go with, this or that. But now that we have HBO Max, there's absolutely no reason why we can't have diversity. It's like, one thing I've said, the perfect example is the Deathstroke movie. There's absolutely nothing, that could stop them from saying, hey, you know what? Let's give, somebody 30 million bucks here and just do like a raid style film for Deathstroke and throw it on HBO Max.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, these are actors for hire, and and look, and there's also, I mean, they seem to be committed to this universe being together. Even though there hasn't, I mean, when you look at like numbers for Marvel and numbers for DC, and this is not me, having any bias here, but if you look at the COVID numbers for Black Widow, even though it was not a financially successful movie, the streaming numbers, people were willing to spend $30. 2 million people were willing to spend $30 in the film. People were willing to go to the theaters. That would have an opening weekend of 80 million, but then it dropped off. But compare that to Suicide Squad, more people, like, I think, well, I don't know about more people, but a significant amount of people, at least a plurality of people, stayed home and watched Suicide Squad more than they watched Black Widow. But more people went out and go to see it in the theaters for Black Widow than the Suicide Squad. And now, and because Shang-Chi doesn't have a day and date release on Disney Plus, people are kind of now forced to, and it's supposed to be doing pretty well during its Labor Day weekend. I think it'll be I think they're saying like it could go up to like 70 million in its first 4 days, which would be pretty impressive. But I mean, next year we could see that change, because next year DC is not going to be doing a day and date release with their movies. They're going to be all exclusively, but they're also doing HBO Max exclusive films too. And I think that's what the Snyder Cut was meant to be, to see if original content can be successful in streaming numbers. And in a way it was. And if they can continue being successful, and if they can like do some more of the Snyderverse down the road, and like, we'll just have to see with Discovery, because I don't think we're going to be getting any kind of news this year or even next year. But, in 2023, if there is interest from, Affleck and Cavill and Godot and Miller, because people thought Affleck was going to be done after Justice League 2017, but he came back for The Flash. And Henry Cavill has never stated he'll never play the role again. He's never, even Christopher Reeve, like after Superman 4, was all like, yeah, I'm done with the role. Mm-hmm. Although he did say he was done with the role after 3 as well, but he came back for 4. So you can never really say these actors are. You can say they're down, but they're not out. And I think don't underestimate the power of a powerful paycheck.
No, that is 100% accurate, and and I think in all honesty, I think probably Affleck's his appearance in the upcoming Flash movie, I think is going to probably be a very powerful motivator for Discovery of if they go with his film or a miniseries on HBO Max, because right now, honestly, they're looking at it practically of saying like, okay, well, he hasn't had a solo movie yet, so we don't know, obviously, they're looking at it like, okay, is he popular enough to have his own, franchise? And I think that honestly, that film is probably going to be a big part of whether it happens or not. If it is well received, if people really enjoy it, then they might say, hey, you know what? Why don't we do a prequel, a 3-episode miniseries or something like that? And I think that that when it comes to what you were saying of, when we'll hear any news, I agree with you. I don't think we're going to hear anything at DC Fandom or even afterwards. I've always said, one, we have to wait till the merger is completely through. And also, two, I think one of the major, because, Justice League was a streaming only release, and it was also released when HBO Max was a smaller, like a smaller service, that they kind of have to gauge a little bit of how popular is this. And I think that the 4K and Blu-ray sales coming up on the 7th and beyond and into the holiday season are going to be a huge motivator for if they continue it or not. If we see massive sales with that, similar to what we saw with the Ultimate Edition of BVS, then I think possibly the new head of Warner Media and Discovery may say, okay, you know what, this might be worth looking at a little bit here of bringing some of these actors back and expanding a little bit on streaming.
Yeah, and I will say this to anybody who is like giving up on because I've noticed online there's two kinds of people. There's DC fans that gave up on DC films because they don't like Snyder, and there's also people online who gave up on DC films because they like Snyder too much and they want to see him do some more, or they're done. So I want to say something on both sides of this. Look, just because the MCU right now is like the Beatles of the comic book genre, DC's motherfucking Elvis. Sorry, is it okay if I curse?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, like DC. Yeah, before John Lennon said, before Elvis there was nothing. DC like is the reason we have Marvel, and Elvis is the reason we had the Beatles. And even though I vastly prefer the Beatles over Elvis, I'll say this as a Beatles fan. Yeah, I mean Elvis, he paved the way for other musicians, and rock and roll today, and we have to give him credit. We got to give DC credit, and we got to show our support. Even though we have some tone deaf people over at Warner Brothers, let's just be optimistic with Discovery. They have more subscribers with their streaming service than HBO Max does.
Mm-hmm.
So they're clearly doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
So they clearly have smart people over there. Let's just see. I want if to anyone who's listening who's like, nah, I'm done with DC. Snyder ruined it for me, or nah, I'm done with DC. WB ruined me for what they did to Snyder. If they're both people on both sides, I would just say just give Discovery a chance, and we can have both. We can have DC and Marvel. I am so tired of the whole which one's the better argument. It's just right now, like there's some because of the pandemic, people seem to be kind of tired of superhero movies and tired of going to the theater, but there are still people out there that still want to see both, and there is a precedence for that, and I really hope more people tune into HBO Max because if people boycott the movies, if people boycott HBO Max, it's not going to help Snyder. It's not going to help Ray Fisher. It's not going to help all the people that WB screwed over. There's creatives out there trying to make the best products possible. I say we support them. If you don't want to support them, that's perfectly within your right. But I'm telling you, if you go out and support the movies on both the theaters and in HBO Max, we have a better chance of restoring the Snyderverse than we would if we boycott.
I 100% agree with you. I get really tired of hearing the boycott arguments and everything because, I'm a huge Zack Snyder fan, and I loved what he did with DCEU. That being said, I knew that the DCEU was going to continue long after he moved on to something else. And, and so I'm kind of the same mind. And I'm like, hey, what? I don't mind seeing films with different tones. I don't mind comedies. I don't mind, films that are, grim, dark, serious, like the Batman or whatever, and I think that, I just want to see the story that Snyder started completed, and and I want to support everything else. I'm very excited for Aquaman too. I'm ecstatic for Black Adam. It's like, those films look like they're going to be awesome, and I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think we just need to support support their films, and also as a line here, I think I can say to people like, you don't have to support a film if you don't like that film. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, you know what, the Suicide Squad wasn't for me. I don't like hard R gore films or whatever. That's fine. You don't have to watch it. But it's silly to kind of say, oh, this film looks good, but I'm not going to see it just because of this reason. Like that's just silly, and it doesn't help. Like you said, it doesn't help restoring the Snyderverse at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay if you don't want to go out to the theater and see it. If it's on the streaming service, because I know there are people out there who are still apprehensive about going to the theater. Like I'm going to a drive-in in about a couple hours to go see Shang-Chi because people in my theater, in the last two theaters I was in, because I went to go see Suicide Squad, 10 people in front of us weren't wearing masks. I went to go see WWE SummerSlam in a movie theater. 5 people behind us weren't wearing masks either. It wasn't as bad because they were distanced from us, but it was kind of like a catalyst. Like unless there's some strict COVID guidelines, I don't really feel comfortable going back to a theater for a while. Drive-in's fine because you're in your car, you don't have to worry about social distancing, and they can deliver snacks to you in some of them. So it's just it's but what I'm not saying go to the theaters, but just if you can safely do it, I would recommend it.
No, definitely. I agree with you. I think that we should be supporting, films and supporting theaters. Like you said, if you feel safe enough to go and if there's protocols in mind, then go for it. I'm of the same mind as you that, I'm likely going to be seeing, Shang-Chi and, No Time to Die, in a drive-in more than likely, and stuff. But at the same time, like I said, you're still supporting the theater experience that way and you're supporting those films. And I think overall that's a good thing. And I think the DCEU has a bright future ahead of it. A lot of good films, coming out. A lot of great filmmakers. And I can't remember his name right now, but the head of Discovery, Discovery Warner, is a guy who's known for wanting to work with creatives and wanting to support, fan bases and filmmakers. And so, I think he's going to bring that same energy into the new merger in wanting to rebuild and accept everybody and all of the fans in to make sure that everybody gets something that they want. There was a quote
Yeah.
from the showrunner of all of the Star Trek shows on Paramount Plus that he said, not every Star Trek show is going to be for everyone, but there is going to be something for everyone. And I think that that's just the best way that you can build a universe and a brand.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, even though despite all the negative discourse with the sequel trilogy, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, I believe Ahsoka Tano is getting her own series. Like that seems to be a more positive discourse going forward. And yeah, I'd say like David Filoni, John Favreau, I think they have a better grasp of how to cater to fans than Kathleen Kennedy. And as much as I do like The Force Awakens, and I liked moments of The Last Jedi, there clearly was not a cohesive plan for those movies. And so, but there seems to be a plan with what they're doing with the Disney Plus television shows.
I agree. I was of the same mind. I enjoyed The Force Awakens as well, and I was excited for that trilogy. And unfortunately, it just kind of seemed like it just flamed out with each successive sequel. But I think, you bring that up as a perfect example of that. We had a divided fan base. We had, the Star Wars brand in tatters kind of after Rise of Skywalker. Uh,
Mhm.
but at the same time, you see with Dave Filoni and Favreau, with The Mandalorian and that whole universe that they're bringing everybody back and they're repairing a lot of the damage. And they're saying, like, hey, you know what? Star Wars is still great. We can still tell great stories. And, if you don't like those movies, there's going to be something here for you, with that.
Yeah, because I have family members who don't like the prequels. I have family members who don't like the sequels. I have family members who don't like both. But
Mhm.
you know what? As somebody who kind of takes them as a film by film basis, because I don't like episode one. I think episode two is okay. Love episode three, Revenge of the Sith. I liked Force Awakens. Didn't really care for Last Jedi that much. Didn't really care for Rise of Skywalker. I did like Rogue One, but I didn't like Solo. Because I'm a little eclectic with
Mhm.
my opinions of those movies. As somebody who's gone through an on and off relationship, I am looking forward to seeing more of these characters, and I'm looking for, I can't really speak. I don't know. I haven't really been able to get into the world of Star Trek. I mean, I like Next Generation was Star Trek to me, and I haven't really, and that's pretty much been it for me. But
Mhm.
I can understand. But yeah, I mean, if people can love, what they're doing with Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard and other content, I hope you guys like it, and if you don't, I wouldn't say give up on Star Trek altogether, but I would just say, if you're really into Star Trek, I think having inflammatory comments about it online won't really help you. I think it'd be better if you just wait until the next one, give it a chance, and then and maybe after like 5 or 6 attempts at Star Trek, and you're like just burned out. I get it, but
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, I mean, like there's people like that gave up the DCEU after just 2 movies or
Mhm.
just 3 movies, and because of that, they're missing out on they're missing out on Wonder Woman, they're missing out on the Suicide Squad, Shazam, Aquaman, um, Zack Snyders Justice League, and all these great film. I mean, Birds of Prey was Wonder Woman 84 and it was meh, but the rest, you're missing out on great stuff. I don't. I think just saying, "Oh, I'm done with DC after just 1 movie or 2 movies," I think that's ridiculous. Because like, who do you know anyone who gave up after Iron Man 2 or Thor: The Dark World? I don't. Or
No,
after X Men Origins Wolverine, maybe some, but
no, that it's so true. I mean, you look at even back at the phase one of the MCU. A lot of those films were rough. It's like you had Iron Man, which is great. Really enjoyed Incredible Hulk and stuff. But then Captain America: First Avenger was I mean it was all right. But it's like compared to some of the later movies, there was definitely issues. And that's one thing I have respected about Kevin Feige is that he's pushed through some of their films that were lackluster, and he said, okay, well, we're going to fix those issues and go on to the next one. It's going to be even better, and that's what I want to see with the DC Extended Universe. That I want to see them basically say, okay, we realize we've had some issues here with, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, but the next one we're going to fix that. And like you said, 1984 was very meh. I was kind of like, I didn't really like this movie. But you know what? That doesn't mean that I'm not excited for Wonder Woman 3, because I'm hoping that they're going to fix the issues, and I love Gal in the role, and so I'm excited for it.
absolutely.
Mhm,
Well, thank you for having me on, Byron. This has been a great pleasure. Hope we can do this again sometime.
mhm. definitely. Thank you for joining me. I think we had a great conversation, and yeah, you're welcome back anytime. Thanks for joining Under the Lens.